Thanks, Professor. Colleagues, good morning. Can Georgia see you're still speaking? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I can hear you.
Can.
Thank you. Thanks very much. May I first take this chance to wish ourselves and our colleagues, some of whom, as you know, are busy in the newsrooms, trying to put out material for today and tomorrow. Many others who probably on their way coming to join us, and many others in the world. As we celebrate this day, we remember them and we remember ourselves for staying this course and trying to do that which matters for our society. Many amongst us have had to pay fairly significant prices. Some even paid the ultimate price to do that which we seek to do. But we remain steadfast and committed that this is important for our society and it is important for humanity, and somebody must do it. And we are here, and I believe it's important that we keep that we stay that course. I'd also like to celebrate key editors in Ethiopia, in Uganda, in Tanzania, in Kenya, and of course colleagues in Rwanda, South Sudan, and Somalia, who have made this meeting possible, because this conversation needs to be had so that we do find a meeting point in terms of how we deal with issues that affect our profession in the region. Depending on the spaces that each of us occupy, sometimes those issues are different. Sometimes they're easy, other times they're very difficult. But somebody, and this time ourselves, passed to this job. And I want to encourage ourselves that we remain committed, and not just committed for ourselves, but to also mentor colleagues and friends to join this course. We wouldn't be able to gather today if it were not for support from friends like at UNESCO and at the Open Society in East Africa, and I'd like to also acknowledge their support in this struggle. They've enabled us to first be able to put our thoughts together as we're doing this morning, but also to challenge a few of us to distill these thoughts in a lot more elaborated ways into a publication that the East Africa Editors Forum will be embarking on fairly shortly to try and make sure that the ideas we have to respond to the reality of journalism today are ideas that are distilled and are shareable to a much bigger audience. Just 6 things I wanted to highlight as a way of setting us off before we get into the substantive discussions. And it's just a question of when it comes to public journalism in Eastern Africa, what are some of the areas, some of the issues we need to keep in mind as we forge ahead? And I've given this some thoughts, and I wanted to share some 6 ideas with you. The first one, and I think is a no-brainer for many of us editors, is that journalism is not worth anything unless we drive the whole issue of accountability reporting. Yeah, and in today's world, that probably is more important than ever. That verification and giving those who don't have voices some voice is ultimately the most important thing we can ever do. Depending on the spaces we are in, some of us might find it a bit easier than others, but that for me must remain the pillar on which everything else hangs. The second one for me, and it's one that might be, as journalists and as editors, haven't done a good job of, but probably time has come for us to just reconsider, is that we must build structures and grow a fraternity of professionals who care about accountability reporting. Yeah, and we do that by building associations, by making sure that the contexts, the legal and policy context in which we are enabling for those who choose to do ethical journalism to thrive and survive. I think it's our duty. We cannot cede that to anybody else, because if that those structures, if that context is not there, our work becomes even more and more difficult. The third thing is that journalism is not an issue for journalists only. Yeah, it is an issue for society at large. And in society, there are many people who've come up to be defenders or even change agents, if you like, promoting freedom of expression. I think a time has come when we have to look at those change agents and those defenders with a friendly eye, so that we have a lot more people making and contributing and delivering the right message, so that those forces, those who feel that they're powerful, who feel that they have the resources, or even the violence, the means of violence to try and clamp on free media, increasingly end up being in the minority. I think that's important. Then number 4, and talking to friends in across all our countries, and indeed across the world, it is true that disruption, economic and digital, is squeezing the media space or the newsrooms, if you like, in fairly significant ways. And that unless we find ways to innovate and push back, then we're going to be squeezed out of our space, and other charlatans will take over those spaces. But many times, that innovation is driven by cadres and disciplines in the media, but not so much by ourselves as editors. Many of us haven't found time and space to take ownership, to take charge of that agenda. I just wanted to urge ourselves that innovation is a good thing, but it's also risky, because depending on the values that whoever is driving innovation believes in, they can easily, mess up the soul of what we care about. So we will need to think of how is it possible for us to recover that space and take charge of it. The second last one is that regulation, and we see new laws coming out of Ethiopia, we see new laws coming out of Tanzania, and laws and regulations are being used to try and, basically make official very repugnant media policies. And we have to find ways to make sure that conversation is had in the public domain, but also informed by progressive benchmarks. And then finally, and probably a critical one, given this pressure our media is in now, is the whole question of how should journalism be funded. Yeah? In many of our spaces, this question is left a lot of time to marketers, is left to accountants, or generally managers who are not newsroom people. I feel strongly that how journalism is funded is the editor's duty. The others just come to help in that journey, but ultimately, what monies flow into our spaces and how they are applied to make sure that we can report and also to defend and make sure that it doesn't contaminate the editorial space is really our duty. If it means our journalism schools teaching us how to do finance, teaching us how to run companies, I think so be it. But that's a responsibility that we really must keep. In my honest opinion, those 6 things constitute the frontiers that we must look at. I get the question from David in Rwanda, and I think it really is a question that goes to the committee that currently is trying to, on an interim basis, get the East Africa Editors Forum on its footing. And I think I'll take it as an invite that we should engage Rwanda from these very, very early days. I know that in conversations, even South Sudan has also come up. So there is a need and there is an interest, and I think for as long as we are focused and engaged, we should be able to find a room that accommodates all of us. Because at the end of the day, many of the issues that we have to confront, many of the issues that we have to look at, cut across our national boundaries. And many times, even just learning from experiences, from colleagues, helps quite a great deal. And creating a platform where such sharing and lessons can happen, I think will be useful for us all. I thank you, and I thank everybody who has made time to have this conversation. I think it's very clear to us that the future might look very dim, very challenging. The water's very rough, and if you are to look for reasons why it is so, we can find reasons in many places. But ultimately, it behoves us as the leaders of newsrooms in this part of the world to find answers. Yeah, and I really hope that we can put our minds together and find some creative ways to get these answers. Those in power, especially, will always try to push us down, and they'll use every excuse. I mean, even social media, in a way, the challenge that is coming to the mainstream media from social media many times is organized and managed by those same forces. But we all know that for ages they've failed, and they'll continue to fail, but it never stops them from trying. So we just have to do the decent thing and keep going. Thank you very much.